Hi and welcome everyone to this annual Rising Together presentation or an introduction to the Celtic calendar. Let's get straight into it. Tonight is an introduction to basically how to live in rhythm with the Celtic calendar. Hopefully, after watching this, you'll learn how to reconnect with nature, creativity, community, and cycles. And we'll talk about the different types of cycles that you can connect with as well. Basically, I am Katie. I am founder of Yoga Energy with Katie. I teach weekly yoga classes. I do retreats, trainings, lots of different things to do with yoga and Reiki as well. I teach and share Reiki. And I also created Anu Rising. So, just a little introduction to who Anu is. Anu is also known as the goddess Danu. She is a Celtic goddess. She is the mother of the Tuatha De Danann, which means mother of, um, yeah, mother of the Tuatha De Danann, who are a tribe of warriors, an ancient Celtic tribe. So she is this mother and fertility goddess. She is also a goddess of rivers, and down in the southwest of Ireland, she's known down in the southwest of Ireland as Anu. So there's two names for her, so Danu and Anu, depending on where you're from. I'm not from the southwest. I just really liked the name Anu because it fitted in well with Anu, like Anu, rising. So it felt like the goddess was rising, that the feminine energy is starting to come back in a healthy way and hopefully creating a bit more balance in our lives and in the world. And Anu is, yeah, down in the southwest of Ireland, down near Killarney in County Kerry, there is two mountains that are side by side called the Paps of Anu. And they actually look like her breasts. So the land is the goddess itself, and it's just a beautiful way to see the land as a goddess. And Anu, the first mention of Danu is actually from the Vedic tradition. So there is mention of the goddess Danu in the Rig Veda, which is one of the earliest Vedic scriptures. And that goddess was said to be the mother of a tribe that was basically kicked out of India. They were expelled from India. They were said to be a demon tribe, but we will see as we go on in this webinar as well that we're not just going to look at things as good or bad, black and white, dark and light. Um, there is there's goodness in the darkness and vice versa as well. So those first mentions of Danu in India, after she was expelled from India, you see her name travel west, and you'll see this in places like the River Danube. Has connections to the goddess as well. And apparently she, or her energy connected all the way to Ireland as well. So we also celebrate the goddess Danu, or as I call her, Anu, or many people call her Anu. And as I mentioned, I was teaching yoga and Reiki, and I also created the Anu Rising Journal. So this is a cycle journal. Many people use it for menstrual cycle awareness, but as you'll see later on, it can be used for many, many different types of cycles. So basically my journey with the Celtic calendar or the Celtic wheel, I did my yoga training in India in 2016. And when I was sitting in a philosophy class, I felt like the stories I were being told were really familiar to me. And I didn't really know why. I don't even remember the exact story, but I remember the teacher talking about the feminine energy and how the land has a feminine energy, and it all felt really, really familiar to me. And later on, I went to learn more about the Celtic traditions and even that story about how Danu originated in India, and we see her traces move across from east to west and as far here as Ireland. So there is many connections between Celtic traditions and many other indigenous traditions, not just in India, but many of the indigenous traditions are very similar, and we'll see similarities in. My cycle journey, I suppose, I started with Katie McGuire was my teacher around menstrual cycle awareness. That was kind of my first introduction to a more cyclical way of living. But again, this is all much, much bigger than a menstrual cycle, as we'll see a little later. And I loved how Kitty really involved the Celtic wheel with these cycles as well. So we looked at not just the menstrual cycle, but we looked at it in terms of inner seasons and just transforming in different ways, and not just a daily cycle, but a monthly cycle connecting to moon cycles as well. And I was lucky then to learn from Mary Kennedy as well, who does the Celtic Wheel. She has a beautiful online 1 year program, which I did a couple of years ago. So I learned loads from Mary. And then I started visiting a lot of the sacred sites and learning much more about the sacred sites. So the first ever sacred site I was at was, it's not quite this one here, this dolmen, but it looks very similar to it. So on my first ever school trip, I was probably in first or second class, so maybe about 6 or 7 years of age. We went to the Harristown Dolmen in County Kilkenny. So Dolmen is a tomb, um, and they're portal tombs. So they're not just random tombs, and there's probably thousands of them here in Ireland. They're not just random tombs, they're placed on specific parts of the earth. So each site has a specific energy. And these tombs are also known as portal tombs. So there is the energy is a portal, and they say it's a portal to the other world, which is why people were buried there. But also energetically, it can be quite easy to connect to that energy of our ancestors or to the other world. Um, Lough Crew, which is in this picture down here, is something as a place I came across a couple of years ago as well. Probably around 2019 was the first time I think I went there. And Lough Crew is a stone structure in County Meath, and a cairn, many people believe a cairn to be a burial site as well. Many of my teachers who were more spiritual teachers are of the opinion that these sites were more like temples rather than burial sites. And again, they hold very significant energetic potential, and you can absolutely feel the energy in these places. It's really, really incredible when you go to visit them. But Lough Crew specifically aligns with the spring and the autumn equinox. So the entrance to the tomb, I mean, you can actually go and sit inside this tomb. Not anymore because there is damage to it, but up until quite recently, you could go and sit in it. And on the morning of the spring and the autumn equinox at sunrise, the light of the sun would shine directly into the center of the structure. More famously, people would probably have heard of Newgrange, which is aligned with the winter solstice. So on the morning of the winter solstice, and there's a lottery for people. People do a lottery to be able to go and sit inside of the cairn on the winter solstice morning. So Newgrange is probably the most famous one, but actually Lough Crew is much older. So it's even older than the pyramids. They reckon that Lough Crew is almost 6,000 years old. Um, and also connected to the Cailleach, the goddess of winter, which I will talk about later on as well. I think I'm missing a picture there. So sorry, I'm flicking around here. So not only did I start to visit sacred sites, but I also went on, I found that the Celtic wheel and calendar really helped with my own healing journey, but also a growth journey as well, we could call it. And when we look at life or healing or growth, we often see it as this linear journey, that we're in one place. So I'm here, maybe it's in this moment, there's a feeling of sadness, and you want to get to a place of happiness. And you might think, okay, so I'm here and I want to get there. And it's just this straight line. But as I'm sure we know, life, isn't really linear and doesn't always go the way we want it to go. So that's why I found this Celtic calendar and this concept of the Celtic wheel much more helpful. So when we're working with healing, maybe past traumas or healing certain aspects of ourselves, or just being on that journey of growth and expanding, we could look at it rather than a linear journey, we could look at it in terms of a labyrinth. So if we are starting off here and we want to get to the center, where maybe we know more about ourselves or we feel more connected or more balanced, it can take a long, long journey of, swirls and going in and out again. And sometimes we think, oh, I'm nearly at the center, I'm nearly there, I'm nearly finished. But actually, we're quite far away because we've got to go all the way around here and back around again. And sometimes when we feel we're furthest away, we're actually closer to the center, because it's a shorter path into the center then. And it can also look like this, more like squiggles. I don't know if that'll resonate with anyone where they feel like in their life they want to get here and they're here and they want to get over there, but actually the path is kind of all over the place. So it can look more like squiggles. But just to say that that linear, I'm here and I want to get there, is a very kind of modern mindset. Our systems that we live within at the moment they promote like constant productivity, constant growth, and constant motivation. But nature moves in cycles, so it's not linear and it's not even circular. It is more like a labyrinth. It can kind of be all over the place sometimes. And I have found that the Celtic calendar and the wheel and the lessons from all that helps us to be more patient with the journey of it all and the ups and downs and the ins and outs of it all. So yeah, I didn't like writing the problem with the modern system, but I couldn't find a better word for it. Um, but yeah, just this idea. I mean, we all know that the world is not a perfect place, especially at the moment. And we do tend to have this linear way of thinking and this linear way of acting in the world. Um, and in our jobs, our careers, and things like that, and even in our relationships, we tend to reward things like being really productive all the time. But this leads to like burnout, and even I have written there like industrial time. So we're all on this 9 to 5 schedule. We're not all on it, but a lot of us are, or a 9 to 5 mindset. And then this leads to burnout and disconnection from the land and from our bodies as well. Um, and a lot of these systems are built on patriarchal structures that prioritize output over rhythm. So the Celtic calendar is, I suppose, an alternative to patriarchal systems. And it's a forgotten way of living. And a lot of what I say here won't be new, even if it's the first time that you're hearing all of this. It would probably be more like a remembering. So, like I was saying, when I was in India and they were telling me the stories of, their mythology, and there was something in it that felt really familiar. It felt like there was a remembering within my bones. Um, so yeah, if we look at it as a forgotten way of living, that we're just remembering some ways that we can be in the world. So the Celtic calendar we look at it as earth-based, as seasonal, as cyclical, and as um, relational. So really connecting to one another. We're also going to look at a healthy masculine and healthy feminine. So this is nothing to do with being man or woman. It's not about gender. It's about the energies of the masculine energy, which is the energy that brings structure and direction, and the feminine energy is what brings flow and intuition. So, to understand the Celtic wheel, I have this kind of what I think is a really pretty diagram. And this wheel is a year-long calendar. So it's the same year, the same months that we all have the 12 months of the year. But rather than New Year's starting on the 31st of December, in the Celtic calendar, we start at what we call Samhain. So in the Celtic wheel, there are four solar festivals, the equinoxes and the solstice, and then there's the cross quarter festivals, Samhain, Imbolc, Bealtaine, and Lughnasagh. So the new year starts on the 31st of October, and the festival is called Samhain. And it's widely believed that Samhain is where the holiday of Halloween originated. Now, some people will debate that, but yeah, we always humans, we always disagree on some things. So I think it has good basis of Halloween starting with this original festival of Samhain. So it is the same date, the 31st of October. So Samhain marks the start of winter. So we transition into this, yeah, winter phase. So winter is November, December, and January. So Samhain and the winter solstice, or the winter season. Then we move the winter solstice being the darkest night of the year. So the depths of winter, the cold, the dark. Imbolc being the first of spring. So the reason I decided to do this free webinar is because every year I work part-time in a school, and every year there's always a debate, when does spring start? And if you're like me and you went to primary school in Ireland, you will probably know the 1st of February, St. Bridget's Day, to be the start of spring. Most people who went to primary school in Ireland are work off that old calendar, the Celtic calendar. Um, some people who went to primary school in Ireland didn't work off that. And then, of course, we have people from everywhere. And most places in Europe, spring starts at the spring equinox, which is the 20th of March. The meteorological calendar, spring starts on the 1st of March. So they're all true, they're all right, they're just different versions. And with the Celtic calendar, we start spring on the 1st of February, which is the celebration of Imbolc, coming from the Irish words Imavulach, which means in the belly. The Then move on to the spring equinox, which we're coming up to quite soon. We're heading towards that now on the 20th of March, which will be this place of balance, the balance between light and day to equal night, the balance of the masculine and the feminine energy. The next festival is Bealtaine, which is the start of summer. So spring being February, March, April, 1st of May, bring Bealtaine, the start of the summer festival. Summer solstice, then again, this pinnacle of heat and masculine energy, the longest day of the year at June 21st. Then it moves into Lughnasagh, which is the start of the harvest festival on the 1st of August. Um, and moving into the season of autumn. And the autumn equinox, again, returning to this place of balance, the balance of the day and nighttime, the energies of the masculine and feminine, before it moves back into the end of the year and the start of the new year at Samhain again. So we'll go a little bit deeper into that. We're going to kind of focus right in on a smaller cycle and then expand out into bigger cycles again. So, before I move on, any questions, or is this all making sense? You can type into the box, or you can give me thumbs up, or great. Okay, thumbs up. Thanks, guys. Um, yeah, basically the Celtic wheel is, it can be a map for life, it can be a map for creativity and for transformation as well. So we're going to zoom down into a daily cycle because we all have this and we can all relate to it. Whether we follow a good pattern or not is another thing, but I think most of us could agree on what a healthy daily cycle might look like. So our daily cycle is called a circadian rhythm, and every human has this. Man, woman, child, we all have a circadian rhythm. It's a 24-hour cycle. And the hormones responsible for this or connected with this is melatonin and cortisol. So melatonin helping us to feel sleepy at night and cortisol helping us to kind of wake up and be more productive in the day. So it's our sleep and wake patterns, um, a regular daily routine. And this smaller focus is we're going to base it off, yeah, those more linear patterns, those more kind of 9 to 5 patterns. So if we start how we do with the Celtic calendar, we start in the darkness at Samhain. Can you see my arrow moving on the screen there? Thumbs up or yeah, okay. I wasn't sure if it's just me that can see that or everyone. Okay, thank you. So with the Celtic calendar, we start in the darkness. And if we were to start this cycle in the darkness, we'll be starting about when we're about to go to sleep. So maybe it's in the late evening time. And if you were to bring the Celtic wisdom into this, you could start your day at this time and bring in your intentions for the following day as you're about to sleep. So if we compare this to Samhain, to winter solstice, this is a time of deep rest, imagination, dream state, replenishment. Oops, sorry, I'm after going off of there. Replenishment. And then we move around to through the nighttime or deep rest state. And then maybe we'll say, I don't do this at all, but we'll say, for instance, if someone was to wake up about 4:30 in the morning, it would be a slow awakening. And this is where people get confused about why springtime starts at the 1st of February, because here in Ireland on the 1st of February, it's still really cold. It could be snowing. It's quite dark still for the start of springtime. Um, and people always say, "Oh, but it's not spring yet. It's not bright. There's not lots of flowers out." But it's a slow transition from winter into spring, same as it's a slow transition from night into morning. So if we look at the daily cycle, imagining, or maybe some of us do wake up at 4:30, it might still be dark outside. But it's morning time. We're starting to awaken. We might wake up slowly, gently opening the eyes, moving slowly. That real spring energy is soft, slow. It's still quiet. And then we start to move around into more active energy. So as the morning progresses on, we slowly start to build our energy. Towards that, between maybe noon and 3 o'clock might potentially be our most productive time. So this is mirroring the energy of Bealtaine and summer solstice. So that really productive time of the day, that time where we're really outward. It's probably the time where we have our most conversations, where we, yeah, do the most activities. And then we start to move around again into evening time. So as the day goes on, the energy of the sun starts to dwindle, the energy of the moon starts to rise. We um, move back into the Lughnasagh and autumn equinox, and then slowly, and then that energy of harvest time and Lughnasagh is like we're preparing for winter again. So it might be to prepare, you slow things down, you dim the lights, maybe you have a chamomile tea, and this is all in preparation for that nighttime, that Samhain energy again of deep rest. So that's the Celtic calendar in a daily cycle, just looking at those changing energies in the cycle. We can, of course, then, if somebody has a menstrual cycle, it would be called what's called an infradian rhythm. And then over the course of maybe 28 days, the hormones are changing and rising and falling in different ways than a daily cycle. So we have a small cycle of one day, and then some people have that infradian rhythm, that monthly cycle that's on a slightly larger scale. We can connect that to a moon cycle as well, which we'll look at as we go on. So these are the different types of cycles. And I'm sure there's many more than this, but these are the main ones that we're going to focus on. So we have a daily cycle that we looked at. We have a moon cycle, which we will look at. So the moon has is 29 days cycle, more or less, where it starts with the new moon or the dark moon, where you don't see the moon in the sky, and then it slowly comes into this crescent shape, and it starts to build up to a full moon, and then it starts to become smaller again until it's complete darkness in the night sky. We can have a creative cycle. So what I mean by that is I use this wisdom of the Celtic calendar when I'm creating something like this online webinar, or when I'm creating my yoga classes or retreats or all the different things that I do. So a course like this starts in my imagination. It's that moment of dreaming. What would it look like? How it would look. Is it going to be online? Who's going to be there? What are people going to learn? Just these all these dreamings about what a course like this would look like. Then the spring energy comes in and I start to plant seeds. So maybe it's gathering some information about what I'm going to share. Then the summer energy comes in and I'm really putting in the work of maybe promoting it and structuring it all together, doing these Canva designs and presentations. That's real summer energy, action, getting it done. And then the Lughnasagh or the autumn energy is that kind of harvest. So a creative cycle might be over a couple of cycles. You might go through 10 cycles before something is actually comes to life. So if it was a couple of cycles, that autumn energy, that Lughnasagh energy might be just tying up loose ends, looking at where can I do better the next time? What can I edit? What can I change? And then you go back into the dream state again, coming back into the intuition and so on and so forth. Maybe it's one cycle it takes to create something, maybe it's 10 or 20, just depending on what you're creating. We can have a womb cycle. So, like I mentioned earlier on, a menstrual cycle is usually about 28 days, and a life cycle. Um, and anyone watching this, I presume, is living. So we are all, depending on your belief system, you might have lived before, you might have died and been reborn, and then you live, and life starts to, you move into this really active phase of life, and then things start to decline, decay starts to happen, death, rebirth. And it's just this constant cycle, again, depending on your belief system. But even if it's not a sense of reincarnation, it's a transformation. It's simply just things changing. So all the different cycles, and there's many, many more that we could look up, but they're the main ones that I tend to focus on. Again, any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat, and I'll either get to them as we go or I'll get to them at the end. Um, so yeah, just another diagram of how we can look at these different phases. The winter, so these are broken down to 8 festivals on the outside. We have the goddesses that are connected to each phase. There are gods, as Celtic gods as well, but I like to focus on the goddesses. Um, we have the different menstrual phases, and we have the moon phases as well that we can look at. And you can expand outwards from this as well. Cycles can be as big or as small. They can be so focused in on a daily or even a smaller cycle. Cycles can even expand out to lifetimes and different shifts in consciousness. It can get really, really big. We can look at um, planetary cycles, all these different things, but that's too big for me at this time, and it's too big for a 1 hour online webinar as well. But yeah, we basically have winter, which is the celebration of Samhain and the winter solstice. The Cailleach is the goddess connected to it. This is the phase of menstruation, and it's the dark moon phase as well. So you can see all the different phases as we go around. It just keeps going round and round, over and over, changing as we go. Okay, lovely. So we're also going to look at the feminine and masculine. And like I mentioned earlier, this is nothing to do with gender, being man or woman. It's the qualities that we all have within us. So the feminine without the masculine becomes chaotic and directionless, and the masculine without the feminine can become rigid and exhausted. So this symbol is the yin and the yang symbol. So the yin is it's usually a black and white symbol. I just thought this was a pretty one for the presentation. So the darker color is the feminine with a bit of the masculine in it. The lighter color is the masculine with a bit of the feminine in it. So this is from the Taoist tradition, the yin and yang, the symbol of harmony. So when we have that balance of masculine and feminine, we're in harmony. We also see this in other traditions, such as Hatha yoga, you might have heard of. Hatha means sun and moon. So again, it's just about balancing these different types of energies. And yeah, a balanced life means moving through rest, inspiration, which is the feminine aspects, and action and harvest, which is the masculine, then to rest again in this constant cycle. So this perfect balance of masculine, feminine. So in today's day and age, I think I mentioned earlier on about just this constant productivity, constant consumerism. It's quite, it's very dominant in the masculine energy. And we can see this is really having a negative effect on us, on the world, on the planet, on the animals, on everything. So perhaps by bringing in a bit more of the feminine, we can come back into this balance. But a really popular word or common word, or well-known phrase at the moment is toxic masculinity. And yeah, these are all these overconsumerism, these are kind of toxic masculine traits. But there's also the toxic feminine as well that we don't hear so much about. So if each of the energies, this toxic and this healthy qualities, and of course we want to balance the healthy qualities. So let's have a look at the different aspects. The unhealthy feminine. So when we're in our feminine energy too much, if we're resting all the time, if we're constantly looking inwards all the time, if we're constantly in our imagination, in that dream state, this can cause stagnation, a withdrawal from life, emotional heaviness, and disconnection from purpose. Whereas a healthy feminine will look like deep rest, intuition, inner listening, integration, and patience. So the feminine energy is slow moving. We need to be patient with it. And a really good lesson from the feminine is that rest is not laziness, but it's preparation for rebirth. We often want to skip the rest part of the cycle because we want to always do and go and be rewarded and constantly achieve that type of thing. So the unhealthy masculine is when we're forcing outcomes, when we're being controlling or dominating. This leads to things like burnout and from constant doing. When we're ignoring our intuition or we're not resting, when we're pushing for growth before it's ready. So if we're constantly trying to achieve, this is quite unhealthy masculine energy. But the healthy masculine energy, it takes clear action. It's giving structure to ideas. So if the feminine is the imagination, the dream, the masculine is what brings the structure to those ideas. It's protecting and supporting growth. It's focused energy, commitment to bringing something new into the world. So, like I said, not always just being in the dream state, but bringing those dreams into reality is the balance of the masculine and the feminine. And the life lesson from the healthy masculine is that action gives form to inspiration. So I'm gonna play a song with this next slide. So just listen to the words of this. It's just a couple of sentences. So just have a listen. Into this world through voices of thunder. So that's a song called Savage Daughter, and the whole song is beautiful, but I always come back to those words. So the reason the Celtic New Year starts at the start of winter, and we start by moving into a rest state, is because we're all brought forth out of darkness into the world through blood and through pain. So it's how everything starts. If you plant a seed, the seed is planted in to the earth and it's in the darkness before it comes up into the light. So everything starts in the darkness. So the festival of Samhain, like I mentioned earlier, is connected to the goddess on Cailleach. And we tend to, maybe it's shifting a bit now, but in in our culture, in our modern culture here in Ireland and especially around Europe, we tend to have a negative association with old age and death. Um, but when we follow the wisdom of the Celtic calendar, we really start to appreciate and see the wisdom in these things and to not to fear it, but to embrace it. So the themes of Samhain are death, ancestors, and transformation. So each of the festivals are said to be on the date of the festivals. It said the energy is supposed to be thin, but or the sorry, I'm getting this wrong. The veil is thin, they say, meaning that the energy between this world and the other world, the veil between both worlds are thin, so it's easier to connect to perhaps our ancestors, especially on the celebration of Samhain. So the veil is thin. And the Cailleach is, like I said, the goddess of winter. She is this wise old crone. And even those words, old crone, tend to have a negative association. But actually, I think we should really embrace the crone. There's such wisdom. If we look at the picture of this woman here, like modern beauty standards probably wouldn't have her on the cover of Vogue. But like, take a minute to actually look at her wrinkles, her eyes, like the stories that are in the features of her face. Like there's so much life has happened to that woman. And actually, we can change our perspective to see the beauty and the wrinkles and in what's, let's face it, a body that will happen to all of us. A body is decaying eventually over time. And then I have the picture of the old hands as well. You know, we're so opposed to wrinkles and being old and but actually looking at the hands, all the things that they've made, all the hugs they've given, like there's such beauty in it. And this idea of the crone, even in the likes of Disney stories, the old witch is always this horrible old woman who was really mean to children. But actually, the idea of the witch comes from on Cailleach, and the Cailleach is said to cover the land in her veil so that the land can rest and that transformation can happen. So instead of looking at the Cailleach like like an old witch, this evil old woman, actually she's this beautiful grandmother figure that tucks us in at night and gives us a little kiss on the forehead and tells us to rest. Um, and I feel like that's a much softer way of looking at it and a much um, more balanced way of looking at it rather than being afraid of the oldness, afraid of the old crone. The winter solstice then is continuing on with these lessons, looking at the darkness, the rest, the introspection, and the stillness, and pretty much everything to do with the this phase of or this season of the wheel can be challenging for us, for many of us, because the darkness. Actually, a lot of these things have fear associated. We have fear of the darkness. We can feel very fearful in stillness sometimes, which is why people find things like sitting for meditation just really frustrating, really challenging, because in the stillness, we'll meet the darker parts of ourselves. We'll maybe meet the things that we've been hiding away in the darkness. So, this aspect of winter solstice and Samhain helps us to look into those shadows, and not to be fearful of it. And also, the lesson is that rest is radical. A teacher called Uma Dimsmore Tully, who teaches a lot about yoga nidra, yogic sleep. That's her famous saying that rest is radical. Um, she was talking about how, just as people, when we're well rested, we're much nicer people, we're cranky when we're not rested. Then we move on to Imbolc, the 1st of February. This is connected to the goddess Bridget or Saint Bridget. So Saint Bridget came after the goddess. Um, like I mentioned, I grew up through school celebrating Saint Bridget's Day, and the goddess Bridget is starting to make a re-emergence again. We're starting to look towards the goddess now as well. So the saint was there for many years, but even before the saint, there was the Celtic goddess Bridget, and they have a lot of the same qualities. Bridget, who is actually a transformation of the Cailleach. So the Cailleach transforms into Bridget at spring. Bridget is the goddess of healing, of water and fire. Um, she's the goddess of creativity and also of what's the word I'm looking for? Of smiths. So like making things like iron swords, that type of thing as well. So this time of year brings inspiration, creativity. It's like the first stirrings of spring. And the lesson in this phase is to protect the small spark of inspiration. So when we come out of our rest state, we're not just rushing into that full summer energy. So just like we wake up in the morning, wouldn't it feel nicer to have a slow transition, a slow morning, enjoying the slowness of waking up to the day? That's the energy we're looking for in a spring phase in our life. The spring equinox, which I mentioned, is coming up on March 20th. Um, we're continuing on the spring energy. We're looking at fertility, possibility, and the balance of light and dark. So the spring equinox is equal day and night. And we're really looking at what wants to grow in your life. So what is ready to come into the world? What are you ready to bring forth? When we move into Bealtaine, I like to look towards the goddess Anu or Danu. And you can look towards different gods and goddesses. We're looking at the qualities. So even looking towards other traditions, we can look towards the Vedic tradition again, maybe looking towards the goddess Durga. There's all these mother goddesses. We can look towards different gods or deities or archetypes. These are symbols to bring more of the energy that we're looking for. So you can translate it into to any language you want, really. Um, but the goddess Anu, or the energy of Bealtaine, the start of summer at the start of May, it's all about passion, sexuality, creativity, joy, um, energy, really about action. And, we see all the wildflowers springing up around the land. And this energy is about what we're ready to share. So if the spring energy is considering and setting seeds and what's ready to come forth in life, the alternate is getting ready to share our gifts in life. The summer solstice is that the height of that masculine energy, that really outward expression, vitality, abundance, expression, really letting yourself shine at this phase of your life or the season of your life. Then we move into Lughnasagh and look towards the goddess Taltu, who was actually the foster mother of Lu, who this festival is named after. So Lughnasagh is named after the god Lu, who is the sun god. Um, and at the start of the harvest festival, people would show gratitude towards the god Lu for providing the sunlight, for growing the crops. Um, and I have a picture of a hurl and a slitter there because we have and it's not so popular now, but there is still a thing called the Taltu Games. I see you smiling there. I don't know if you're smiling at that, the Taltu Games or not, but so the Taltu Games are originally were connected to what's called funeral games. And even that as a tradition is so beautiful. In older times, funerals weren't just a time of sadness. Of course, that was part of it, but there was also games that were celebrated. People played games at funerals, um, or had competitions. Some of the competitions were stone lifting. Seeing who the strongest man was to lift the heaviest stone in the village. But yeah, the GAA, which is the Gaelic Association, the Gaelic Games Association, which is why I have the slitter and the hurl there, because there was a competition, I think it was a competition within the GAA that had the Taltu Games as well, so named after. So even today, we're still talking about the goddess Taltu. People might have heard of the Taltu Games, but not have known that it was connected to that goddess. So yeah, this is all about gratitude, skill, the games, like I mentioned, and it's the harvest, the first harvest of the year. I have two lunases there. Oh, it's supposed to be the autumn equinox instead of lunases, sorry. So again, this is about balance, that equal light of day and night. Um, and this is about letting go as well. As we're in the autumn of the year, the trees will start to be losing their leaves, they're letting go. And we're having gratitude for the seasons that have passed, the abundance that are in a life, and the harvest that we're reaping the rewards of what we sowed. And we're honoring what has nourished us. And then, of course, it goes back into Samhain, starting the Celtic calendar again, starting the new year. So, the ways in which we can practice living the Celtic wheel or with the Celtic calendar is like seasonal rituals. And some of our other Anu Rising Together um, events, we would have done, yeah, just different little rituals, lighting candles, connecting to the elements, especially the water, connecting to the land. But even something like making a Bridget's cross is a lovely ritual to do at springtime. Journaling, so we often, sitting to reflect is probably part of every healthy practice in terms of self-growth and self-development and healing. Um, we can visit some of the sacred places. Like I mentioned, there's Loughcrew, Newgrange. There's so many places. We're blessed to still have so many sites in Ireland, even though many of them are not promoted a lot. There's still lots and lots of places you can visit. Newgrange probably being one of the biggest visitor attractions of those types of sites. Yeah, and aligning creativity with the seasons. So whatever your creative spark is, whether you like to work with art or it might be to do with your work or aligning it with the seasons or even just aligning your daily cycle with the seasons and then adjusting to rest and work cycles. So really appreciating especially those moments of rest because we're told to do the work all the time. We're told to be in the light. We feel like we're rewarded more for being in that active state, and maybe we need a little bit more of the rest. So finding that balance. So I did loads and loads of talking, loads of information. So let's just take a moment to sit with ourselves. So you might have a journal with you. You didn't need to bring one. If you do, you might use it. If not, you're just going to sit with what's present for you right now. So if you'd like to get comfortable, you can sit or you can lie down. If it's comfortable, closing your eyes over. And just take a nice deep inhale through the nose and maybe let a sigh out through the mouth. You can do that once or twice more if you like. So we're moving towards the Lughnasagh autumn equinox phase of this webinar. So it's time for some reflection, maybe some gratitude. We're harvesting maybe all the information that was in the ether. We're going to use this phase of the webinar to prepare for some rest afterwards. So before we do anything, we are going to connect in with the breath just slightly. Before we do anything, just take a moment to acknowledge how you feel right now. You feel overwhelmed, underwhelmed? Is there any tension in the body? Do you feel stiff from sitting so long? You feel a bit tired from looking at the screen? There's no right or wrong. Just try to acknowledge whatever is present for you. And then we're going to connect into our breath. And just taking a nice gentle inhale through the nose and exhale through the nose. So as you inhale, imagine that you're breathing from the toes all the way up the front of the body. The energy is rising from the ground all the way up. And as you exhale, imagine the breath or the energy moving from the crown of the head down the back of the body. Inhale up the front. Exhale down the back. So from here, connecting into the masculine energy on the inhale, that rising energy that brings heat, awareness, focus. And as you exhale, feel the surrender, the letting go, the softness of the exhale of the feminine. Inhale, rising, exhale, letting go. So you might even imagine it to be like the phases of the moon. Starting at the soles of the feet, that dark moon energy. And as you inhale, the brightness, the light of the moon starting to increase as you reach the full moon at the top of the head. And as you exhale, feeling that energy starting to decrease, become darker, until you reach the soles of the feet again, back to the dark moon. Inhaling to full moon. Exhale, surrender towards the dark moon. Finding the balance in the masculine and the feminine, the inhale and the exhale. And then we'll change that awareness to the four cross quarter festivals. And the awareness is at the soles of the feet, or at that Samhain, that deep winter energy. Use the inhale to rise up through Imbolc and all the way up to Bealtaine at the crown of the head. And exhale down the back, down through Lughnasagh, letting go that autumn energy all the way down to the soles of the feet, back into Samhain. Inhale, the energy is rising up through spring and all the way up to summer. Exhale to autumn and back to winter. Inhale from Samhain, Imbolc, Bealtaine, down to Lughnasagh and back to Samhain. And really just feeling the emptiness of the exhale, the rising energy as you bring the air in, the fullness after the inhale, really taking a moment to feel that fullness. Feel the energy, feel the sensations as you let go, as you surrender, and then again feeling the emptiness after the exhale, and just trusting, knowing that that breath will start again. You can just slowly bring a hand or your hands to the center of your chest. Letting the breath return to a natural rhythm, but still feeling a natural rise, natural fullness, natural fall of the breath, the natural emptiness. And then take a moment to consider this question. What season are you currently in? You might compare it to your daily cycle. Perhaps you're in autumn or Lughnasagh, because we're in the evening time, we're preparing maybe for rest. Maybe you're at a time in your life where things feel dark, heavy, more like Samhain energy. Maybe you're in a time in your life that you're celebrating your outward expression, you're confident. That summer Bealtaine energy, maybe somewhere in between. Just taking a moment to consider what season, what stage of the wheel you're at. And what does that mean right now? There's no right or wrong. You can take a few moments to just feel into it. You might like to get your journal and write a few words. We won't spend too long. Well, my computer seems to have frozen. I'm just going to take a moment to see if I can move on to the next slide. If not, I'll move on anyway. Okay. Okay, so yeah, you can check in with that daily or maybe on each of the festival days. You can check in to really see where you are. So even though nature is constantly turning and the seasons are constantly changing, maybe checking in daily to see what stage, what feeling, what season is present for you right now. And maybe it's like that healing journey. It's kind of all over the place sometimes, and there's never a linear pattern to it. So just to mention briefly, the next annual Rising Together gathering is on the 22nd of March. So the spring equinox is the 20th, but we'll gather on the 22nd in Raheny. And the theme for this gathering will be what wants to grow in your life. So seeds that were planted on Imbolc. We're still working with the energy of Bridget, so we'll just look at the seeds that you might have planted. If you haven't been to a gathering before, you're still welcome. Um, yeah, we'll have a community sharing circle, just checking in with one another, seeing where we're at. Um, our practice will be a gentle yoga practice with some rest and a ritual, and it's a donation based so that it's accessible to as many people as possible. Um, and yeah, I mentioned in the email that you have a free gift, so I will send on this recording to everyone of tonight, but I'll also send you on a winter solstice practice. And so even though it's a, let me just pause that because of the noise. Even though it's a winter solstice practice, and we're moving towards the spring equinox, it'll still give you an idea of how to work with the seasons and how to bring these practices and to connect them all together. So I'll send that on to you, and I just want to thank you for getting this far into the video or the webinar. So if you have any questions,